Okay, students, welcome. Today we're going to be doing factored form day 3, okay? So last time we had dealt with factored form, um, kind of just factoring for basic quadratics, ones where you sometimes have a greatest common factor, or something that has 3 terms like this, so like x squared plus 2x minus 8, and the factored form for this was x plus 4 and x minus 2. Remember kind of how you go from something like this in standard form over to it being in factored form is you look for numbers that multiply to -8, and then the same numbers have to add to 2, and those are the numbers that go into uh, next to your x in this factored form, okay? So basically, right, we look for numbers that multiply to c and add to b, and that's how we kind of convert it over here, okay? So what we're going to do today is kind of look at some slightly more complicated examples of factoring and see if we can deal with those. So I guess that first question there, it asks, how do we know that the two quadratics x squared plus 2x minus 8 is the same as x plus 4 times x minus 2, even though they're written differently? How do we know they're the same? Well, there's two ways that you could kind of see they're the same. One, you could factor it like we were just saying, so look for numbers that multiply to -8 and add to 2, and I think 4 and -2 would do that, right? Or the other way is you could just distribute out the x plus 4 times the x minus 2, and that would show you that they're the same. So I'm going to do that one, but you can also just factor it. That would work too. So I'm just going to kind of FOIL it, distribute it out. X times x would give us x squared. X times -2 is -2x. And then 4 times x is 4x. 4 times -2 is -8. So then all together here we get x squared. We have a -2x and a 4x that we're going to combine up together because those are like terms, right? Combine those up. -2x plus 4x will give us 2x, right? Positive 2x, and then -8. And so you'll notice that's the standard form for that, okay? So these are the same thing, they're just written a little bit differently, okay? So what we're going to be looking at today is, what if the number in front of your x squared, all the ones that we've done so far have had 1 in front of your x squared, there's only one x squared. What kind of happens when you maybe have multiple x squareds? How do you end up factoring it in that sort of case? Okay, so I'm gonna just well, just maybe move this a little bit so that we can see a little bit further down. Whoops. Okay. Oop. Yeah. So we have our standard form for this one we just talked about, x squared plus 2x minus 8, and the factored form was x plus 2 and x minus 2, okay? Now what we're going to do today is, what if you have like something like this, where you've got maybe 3x squared plus 2x minus 8, and we want to factor that. So if you kind of look at how these equations are the same and different, well, they both have the same number of x's, they both have the same like constant term on the end, they have the same b and c, so they have the same b and c, okay? But then what's different in that second equation, right? There's that a that's on the 3. So a is different for that second equation there. And what we're trying to do here is try and figure out how can we factor 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. Is it kind of going to do a similar thing as this one that we just did, or kind of how can we modify it? Well, if b and c are the same, right, usually the rule we used before was we looked for numbers that multiplied to c and then added to b, right? But that would actually give us, if we use that same process on the 3x squared plus 2x minus 8, if we look for numbers that multiply to -8 and add to 2, well, that's going to give us the same factored form that we had before. So basically, what we're wondering is here, we'll move this a little bit again so that we can see. Whoop. So is the factored form for 3x squared plus 2x minus 8, is that also the x plus 4 and the x minus 2? Is that the same thing? Well, not really, right? Because when you distribute it out, right, you're going to get that original one, the x squared, right? When you multiply it all out, you get the x squared plus the 2x minus 8, not the 3x squared. Okay, so we can't kind of use the exact same process as we used before for this 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. It doesn't give us the 3x squared like we need it to, okay? So let's, we'll go ahead and start a new page. Let's see how we would actually do this. Now there is several ways, sorry, there is several ways that you can go about factoring something like this, the 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. Now, we kind of noticed, right, we needed a 3x squared instead of the x squared that we were getting. So basically our answer, instead of having just one x in both the factors, we're going to need to get a 3x squared, so we're going to need a 3 on one of our x's so that when we multiply 3x times x, that's going to give us the 3x squared that we need, okay? Now, the tempting thing to do is like, oh yeah, well that will give us the 3x squared, so then let's just do the same kind of numbers that we had before. So like, I don't know, the plus 4 and the minus 2. Let's try those to see if when we put those in the factored form, if this will actually work. So let's go ahead and distribute this out and see if this gives us what we need, right? We need 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. So we'll go ahead and distribute this out. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times -2 is -6. And then 4 times x is 4x. Okay. And then 4 times -2 is -8. Okay, now when we combine up our two like terms, we've got two groups of x's here that we can combine up. We get 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. Is that what we wanted to have happen? Well, we wanted 3x squared plus 2x minus 8, so we got really close, but there's a minus on the 2x, so this isn't quite right. So that this one doesn't quite work, okay? So let's go ahead and, try another kind of guess here. Now, here's another possibility for what it could be, okay? So let's go ahead and try that and see if this will work for us. So we're gonna do 3x times x. This would be 3x squared, which is what we wanted for the first term. Then let's do 3x times negative 8. That's negative 24x. And then 1 times x would be x. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. So we're just distributing this out. We're going to see if this gives us the right thing. So we get 3x squared minus 23x minus 8. Okay? Is that what we wanted to have? We wanted 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. So that's not quite right again, right? So that one's not it either. Let's try this last kind of possibility for it. Let's check and see, does 3x minus 4 times x plus 2, does that give us what we want to have happen? Well, let's do it. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. And then negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And so let's combine up our like terms, these two in the middle here. A 6x and a negative 4x gives us 2x. And so that's what we want, right? 3x squared plus 2x minus 8, okay? So it turns out the factored form for this 3x squared plus 2x minus 8 is actually 3x minus 4 and x plus 2, okay? Now, if we kind of go back to what we had seen when the a was 1, so kind of like back what we were doing at the beginning. Here, scroll this up a little bit. Okay, so, yeah, almost there. Okay, we have, for the x squared minus 2x minus 8, it gave us x plus 4 and x minus 2. For this one, we ended up getting 3x minus 4 and x plus 2. So you'll notice the numbers we used were similar, it's just the signs were flipped, right? It was kind of funky. Now it turns out there's not really a good way to go from the factored form for this from the when a is 1 to like this. Sometimes the numbers won't even be the same thing, okay? But what we can kind of figure out is just kind of a process for kind of guessing and checking like what sorts of things we could use to factor this 3x squared plus 2x minus 8. So that's kind of what we'll look at. The method that we're going to teach you here is just kind of a guess and check sort of method, but will kind of help you figure out how to eliminate some of the possibilities when you're working on this. Okay, so let's look at kind of our factored form for this 3x squared plus 2x minus 8 was this guy, right? 3x minus 4 and x plus 2. What do the two numbers we had in the parentheses multiply to? So this negative 4 and this 2, what do they have to multiply to make sure that we get the right thing? Well, those have to multiply to the c term, right? That's how we get the constant term at the end. So those have to multiply to c, or in this case, negative 8, right? And then, so, yeah, where do we see, oh, okay, let's scribble that out. Yeah. So what do the numbers that we have in these parentheses have to multiply to? It was negative 8, which we see in our equation is the very last number in the equation. It's the c, okay? So basically, still, whatever numbers are going to go inside those parentheses still need to multiply to c, but they don't necessarily have to add to b anymore, because when you have this like 3x here, that's going to multiply with whatever numbers here and kind of adjust it. They do still have to add, kind of once you multiply it all out, combine the like terms, right? Then they do have to add to your b, but they always will have to multiply to the c. Okay? So let's see some examples where we actually factor, and hopefully you'll kind of get a feel for how we do this. Okay? So next one we'll look at is 2x squared plus 5x and then plus 2. So first step here when we're factoring is we kind of want to think of what is our factored form going to look like, right? It will look something like that. There should be the 2 kind of parentheses there. And then in order to get a 2x squared, right, what needs to go on these first spots? Well, we're going to need a 2x on one of the factors to get that 2, and then we're going to need just a regular x on the second one so that we get 2x squared. Okay, so that's what it should look like, and then we've got to figure out what numbers to put here and here so that when you multiply this out, you would get the 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. Okay, so then the numbers that go inside here, next we're going to kind of figure out what numbers to put in here. The 2 numbers that you have should multiply to what? Well, in this case, they should multiply to c, which is 2. Okay, so they should multiply to 2 no matter what they are. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of make a guess for what the factored form will be. If we know that the numbers in here should multiply to 2, well, we can think of what numbers multiply to 2. Well, like 2 and 1 multiply to 2. So I'm going to try using those in this. So let's maybe just put 2x plus 2 and x plus 1. And I'll show you in a sec why this is maybe not the best first guess to do, but we'll kind of try it first. So I'm just finding numbers that multiply to 2, and I'm going to use those in my factored form to kind of see if this will work. So now what you can do is just distribute it out to kind of check. Now, we're going to, when we distribute it, we get 2x times x gives us the 2x squared that we wanted, okay? And then the 2x times the 1 gives us 2x. The 2 times the x gives us 2x. Now, at this point, you don't really have to go all the way here and do the last one. 2 times 1 is 2. These 2 should be right because you already kind of designed them to give you the right thing. It's really this middle part that you need to worry about whether that's going to give you the right thing or not. Okay, so 2x plus 2x would give us 4x. Is that what we wanted to have? Well, not quite, right? We wanted 5x, so that's not quite right. Okay, so no, our guess was not correct. We need to make another guess, and then we just kind of keep trying things until we find it. Okay, now with this, I do want to kind of explain this 2x plus 2 and this x plus 1 isn't really the best guess to start out with, just because when you put the 2x and the 2 together here, both of those are divisible by 2, and in your final kind of factored form, not everything is divisible by 2. So that's not really the best guess, but that's okay. We're still kind of learning, figuring out what are good guesses or whatever. So what I'm going to guess next is let's just switch the order that those numbers are in. Really, the only things that multiply to 2 are 2 and 1. So let's just switch where we're putting the 2 and the 1 and see if that helps things. So I'll do 2x plus 1 and then x plus 2. Let's see if that works any better, okay? So we'll distribute this out and check. So we got the 2x squared like we wanted. 2x times 2. Here, I'm going to scooch this. Okay, so 2x times x is the 2x squared. Then 2x times 2 is 4x. And then 1 times x is x. And then 1 times 2 is 2. So altogether we get 2x squared plus 4x and 1x gives us 5x plus 2. And that's what we wanted, right? So it turns out our factored form here is 2x plus 1 and x plus 2. That's our factored form for this one, okay? So there are some kind of procedure ways of figuring this out, but they can be a little difficult to get used to. So what we're going to do is just kind of use this kind of guess and check method. But remember, the numbers that you put here and here, they should multiply to c. So that kind of limits the sort of things that you can put in there, so that there's not too many options. Depending on the polynomial, there might be several options, but you just kind of keep trying until things work, okay? Okay, let's do just a few more examples, kind of make sure that we're getting used to this. Whoops. Okay, so suppose that we're trying to factor 3x squared minus 13x minus 10, and then before we even try and factor this, I want us to think about just making sure we kind of understand what are valid guesses to make here. So like, what guesses would make sense to make when you're doing this. So we're not gonna choose the right answer here, but let's just kind of look through and decide which ones would be guesses that you even could make when you're factoring 3x squared minus 13x minus 10. So remember, you need to get a 3x squared, so there's got to be a 3x in one of them and an x in the other one. So this first option, A, does have a 3x for the first, and then an x for the second, so that is going to give us the 3x squared, okay? And then we also need the numbers without x to multiply to negative 10. So negative 2 times negative 5, is that negative 10? It is. So this would be an okay guess to make. I don't know for sure if it's right? We could distribute it out to check and see if it is, but that's an okay guess to make, okay? Now, as opposed to this next one, right, 3x times x is the 3x squared that we need, right? But then when you do 5 times 2, that gives you positive 10. So that would not be a guess that you could make, okay, for this one. Or at least you shouldn't make it, because it will most definitely give you the wrong thing, okay? Does that kind of make sense? So we're just kind of looking at what guesses even make sense to do here. Does x minus 2 times x plus 5, is that a good guess to make? Well, x times x is x squared. That is not right? We need a 3x to get 3x squared. So this one's bad as well. Let's go ahead and check this next one. We've got 3x minus 5 and an x plus 2, so it's got the 3x, that's good. And then negative 5 times positive 2, that is okay, right? That gives us negative 10. So that could be a guess, right? Let's look at next one, 3x plus 1 times x minus 10. Is that a good guess? Um, yeah, it is, right? 3x times x gives you 3x squared, and then 1 times negative 10, that gives you negative 10. So we could try that one. And then the last one here, 3x plus 7 times x minus 17. It does have the 3x, but then does it have negative 10? When we do 7 times negative 17, that doesn't give us negative 10. So that's not good. Okay, so those are our guesses. Well, some of the guesses that you could make, right? You just need to find things that multiply to the c and that will give you kind of that first term, and then you can kind of start guessing and checking to see what will make it factor the way that you want it to go. Okay, so let's do a couple more examples where we actually go through the process of factoring. Okay, so we have 2x squared minus 2x minus 5. We want to factor this. So we know our answer, where it's a 2x squared. It should probably have a 2x and an x, right? That's what it should look like. Now we just got to figure out what to put in those spots. The numbers should multiply to negative 5, right? The c term, whatever numbers we put here should multiply to negative 5. So let's kind of figure that out. So things that go into negative 5, well, just 1 and 5 go into 5. So one of them can be negative and one will be positive. Let's see. I don't know. Let's just make a guess here. So let's do 2x plus, well, I don't know. I keep changing my mind. Let's do 2x minus 5 and x plus 1. Is that an okay guess to make? Well, yeah, 2x times x gives us the 2x squared, and then the negative 5 times the 1 gives us the negative 5, which we need. Now, the real trick here is to check, are we going to get the right number of x's when we multiply this out, okay? So we already know we get the right number of x squared, so let's just kind of look at how many x's we get. So 2x times 1 gives us 2x, and then negative 5 times x is negative 5x. That gives us negative 3x. So that's not quite right, right? We wanted negative 2x, not negative 3x. So that's not quite right there. Okay, so let's try again. Let's make another guess. Maybe I'll switch it to, we'll switch it to 2x plus 1 and then x minus 5. How about that? Just kind of switch where I'm putting the things. Let's see, does this work? Now, again, we get the 2x squared from this one, okay? So we don't really need to check that. We already know we got that. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x, and then 1 times x is 1x. So negative 10x plus x is negative 9x. So that's not right either, right? We needed negative 2x. So it's not with a positive 1 and a negative 5, right? So let's try a negative 1 and then a positive 5, and we'll kind of see if we can figure it out. So 2x, maybe, what? Minus 1 and then x plus 5. How about that? We'll try that. So when we do the 2x times the x, that gives us 2x squared. 2x times 5 will give us 10x. And then negative 1 times x gives us negative x. So altogether for the x part, we're going to get 9x. Okay, so that doesn't work either. We're getting close, hopefully. I think there's only one more option, right? So let's do 2x plus 5 and then x minus 1. I think maybe there's a typo on this one. We'll see. But we'll multiply this. So 2 times 2x times negative 1 would give us negative 2x, and then 5 times x is 5x. Okay, yeah, so this gives us 3x when we add those together. So that's not great. Basically what that means for this one, because we've tried every possible combination of negative 1 and 5, and then 5 and negative 1, this one doesn't factor, okay? And that is something that can happen sometimes when you're doing this. Sometimes it will not factor. So yeah, this one just doesn't factor. That I think we had meant it to factor, so I think it's a typo. But this one doesn't factor, okay? We tried everything and it didn't work, so yeah. Anyway, let's do just one more example here, and then I think we'll call it good for this video here. Okay, so we now have 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. We want to factor it. So our answer should look like, and I'm going to scoot this up so that you don't see all that messy. That messy that I had there. Okay, so 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. We want to factor that. So what we're going to do is look at, it should be a 2x and then times an x would give us the 2x squared. But then we're going to have to figure out what numbers go inside there. They should multiply to negative 9. Okay, so let's see. Can we think of things that multiply to 9? I guess I'm thinking 3 and 3. To get negative 9, one of them's going to have to be negative. So let's try, I don't know, like a 2x minus 3 and an x plus 3. How about that? We'll try that and see if that works for us. Okay. So that's a guess. Let's now for this, you can distribute it all out, but really all you care about is the x part, because if you've made a smart guess, you should get the 2x squared and the minus 9 just by the guess that you make, right? It's really that middle part that's the difficult part, okay? So 2x times 3 gives you 6x, and then negative 3 times x is negative 3x, so this gives us 3x. Oh wow, we found it. We wanted to have 3x in the middle, and we get it with this one, right? So our factored form would be 2x minus 3 and x plus 3. Now I got kind of lucky there and got it on the first try, right? But sometimes you might have to try several things to make it work. Okay, but that's kind of our process there. So, okay, so I think that's it for our video here today. That's factoring when a isn't 1. You'll want to try the homework, make sure you can do it yourself, and I'll see you guys in the next video.